All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to kick it off. Today, we're going to talk about vibe marketing. I've been looking into the vibe marketing space and researching and trying to understand how to optimize and create a lot of content for the product you're working on. So in the past probably 6 weeks, and I'm trying to combine some of the techniques today. One thing that I realize and look at myself is that technical founders really don't spend enough time marketing their product. And I want to make something that would be helpful today for you guys to kick it off from the templates that I'm going to be sharing today, that through the session, you'll be able to go and create some of the structure that will help you to continue iterating on your content marketing for the future. What is vibe marketing? Vibe marketing is essentially a derivative, at least in my understanding and my perception, is what is vibe coding. Vibe coding is coding by vibe. So we're going to be marketing also by vibes. So that would mean that we're going to use a lot of tools to generate content, but also we're not necessarily going to be really diving deeper into each piece of content and optimizing this for like absolute like human generation vibe. So there's going to be definitely some vibes coming out as auto-generated, but I think that's also the volume game. So for the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about tooling. So we're going to be using Cursor, but you're okay with using a GitHub Copilot, VS Code. You can use also Gemini, CLI, you can use Cloud Code, whatever makes sense. We're going to talk about MCPs and a few MCPs I found useful in content-generated workflows. We're going to talk a little bit of cursor modes. If you're not using cursor, that's fine, but I found this feature to be pretty useful in type of workflows outside of coding. And then we're going to talk about marketing. Specifically, we're going to talk more about SEO and content marketing. So there's a lot of types of marketing. Not necessarily everything is applicable here, but you can also use some of these techniques to help you with some other areas. So we're going to talk about how to generate blog posts, how to build context around your products, use cases, personas, and brand voice. And we're going to talk about how to build a content strategy and a content calendar. Talk about templates, article research, generation, and then we're going to wrap up with SEO, some of the techniques will help you to build a better SEO presence. And we talk about why SEO still matters in the world of ChatGPT. And we're going to talk about keyword optimization and how to streamline all of the content publishing through this workflow. So we're going to be using a couple of tools. If you haven't set it up, I would highly recommend right now. So Cursor, obviously everyone knows that. I really love Firecrawl. And if you can just register right now on firecrawl.dev and get an API key, we're going to try to plug it into our MCP. And we'll try to use that in some of the workflows to go and clone this repo. So we're going to use this repo as a starter kit. So we're going to use web research within Cursor. So Firecrawl is probably like a little bit better for just building the website schema and the sitemap and also like crawling MD files, but Cursor's built-in tool is still fine. Wow. Another MCP that I like to use is Perplexity. I don't think you can get an API key unless you get a paid plan. So I don't want anyone to push to buy products right now. I don't work for Perplexity, but I like it. Cool, yeah. And if you can just clone this repo and open up in your Cursor your IDE of preference, I think that would be super useful. I'll be doing the same. Okay, how's that going? Are we good on IDE? And then are you guys ready to start? Okay, sweet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure I put together again. So it's up to you how you want to structure that. So this is my subjective opinion on this. So what we're going to probably start with is the context. So context is everything. So we'll try to collect context about our product, use cases, personas, or brand voice all together so we can reference that. Then we're going to have some section for the blogs. So we'll also try to get all the existing blog posts if you have them. So like we'll try to build this repository of the blog posts that you already have and trying to generate new ones. So here are a couple of templates that I created for this workshop. And then it's obviously you can use that. We're going to talk about prompts a little bit and Cursor custom modes. And we'll have some research folder here for any type of research we do. So what we're going to start with, and I think I'll talk about like how I use Cursor and how my opinion about Cursor changed in the past 6 weeks while trying to do more content generation. So obviously you can think about this on an IDE. So it's Cursor is for code generation, but it's a super powerful agent that gives you capabilities of first switching the model, which I think is using ChatGPT or Claude.ai. So you lock yourself in a specific model or Gemini 2.5. So you're locking yourself in that environment. Use probably like LM Studio or any other type of like desktop UIs to connect to all of those LLMs. But I find it really useful to basically use Cursor as this agentic platform for anything that relates to content and not necessarily code. So in this repo, we don't have any code at all. So you can think of this as like your Notion database or your Google Drive database where you're working on the content. One thing that's obviously missing is this kind of like collaboration capability, which you get in this collaborative tools, but you've like solo, especially solo founders, you can totally do that and like store all the content in a GitHub repo. What we're going to start probably with is what I found really useful, and I highly recommend checking this out. So this is called custom modes. It's still in beta. So if you can go to Cursor settings, and you find these feature code modes. And if it's disabled, I would recommend enabling that. So what it allows us to do is here in the chat experience, we'll have this drop down. And you've probably seen this is ask a manual background jobs. But what you can do with this is that you can add custom modes. And custom modes would mean that you can customize the model, you can customize the tools that it's using, so you can give specific permissions to MCP. You can do this in YOLO mode, and probably the most important thing in this is that in advanced options, you'll be able to put what I don't think is necessarily a system prompt, but it's something on top of system prompt that will run when you run this agent. So whenever you're working with your files and then put in a prompt here, so you just switch to a different mode, and then that essentially becomes a new type of agent. I'm sorry, in the settings. Okay, so in the settings, so you go to Cursor settings, it's in the chat section here, and then in the chat section, you find the custom modes in the chat. Is it? Okay. Okay. So I created a couple of those. So one of them is called PRD agent. And PRD agent has the custom prompt that I'm putting there. So anytime I want to generate PRD, I'm just put it there. So I collected some of these prompts here in the prompts folder. So you can copy paste that. Obviously, you're welcome to go and modify this to your needs. So it has some core guidance like what to avoid and what to look for. So whenever we want to generate a PRD from this, we can just use this mode. So it's as easy as just switching the mode here. So you can also lock in the model here. So let's say if you find Gemini 2.5 Pro really good at generating PRDs, just use that. For content, for example, I prefer using cloud models, and for more like workflow orchestration, GPT models are better for me personally. There's also like a research type of mode that I created here. One thing we can try today is you can look into this marketing strategist prompt and trying to create your own mode in Cursor and use, let's say, like Gemini 2.5 or like any other model that you have a preference for. Okay, so this is kind of like the setup. Let me make sure we covered all of the settings here, cursor mode, Firecrawl. Okay, cool. And we're going to use the tool called Ahrefs for SEO. I can talk about this later, but this is something specific to SEO. Next then is context. So context is, in order to make this workflows useful for us, we need to provide this with as much idea of what we are doing as a product. Like we work on this product, just the couple of personas we're targeting, maybe that's an ICP there. This is the brand voice that we're using, how we're trying to communicate to our customers. So this is all around content marketing. And I would like us to, what we want to do is we want to try to create essentially the product description of what we do. I would like each of you to grab the URL for your website, and we're going to try to create essentially a product context. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use, let's say like for this exercise, I'm going to be creating a competitor for N8N, but you guys should go and use whatever product you're working on. So I'm going to start typing here, and the prompts would be as simple as possible, but I would say, can you generate the context around what this product does, the use cases it covers, the user personas it's targeting? So create this comprehensive description and context for this product. So for this type of exercise, you can also create a custom mode eventually if you want to do that. I think once you create this context, it will be much easier you probably don't need to do this multiple times. And say this to product. I'm going to kick it off here with, let's say, Opus. The prompt at this point doesn't really matter, so you can make it as short as possible. Yeah, so basically it goes and fetches the data from this web pages you target. Let's say, like, I want to grab all the blog posts. Like, I can say, hey, Firecrawl, go there, grab the blog post, and save this to this folder. And for the website, it's going to return a markdown and save it to the context, and then like repurpose this for generation. So I like Firecrawl because you can do like a bulk. Let's say, like, if you want to analyze a bunch of content, based on the URL, or just create a map, like a sitemap, for example. So we have some context on the product. So I created this N8N.io context overview. So it covers key features, use cases. So pretty much like, I think, whatever they put on the website. So I'm going to create a twist on this, and I'm going to say, it looks like N8N is a very technical product. I would like to modify the description and update this to say, So it's targeting business users, non-technical users. So this is just a customization for me. So that's like feels a little bit unique. And we're going to learn from end to end how to generate like content and what type of content we want to go after. So does everyone have product context already? Okay. So the next thing, again, so you don't need to do that right now, but I think what I find useful when we talk about also personas, like just for you to understand how LLM understands what your website is telling the potential user, how to understand who they are. So based on what we put together, I will create a new chat here. So for the product context, what are we going to do? And so based on the URL for the website, just going to paste it here, and product, generate the list and descriptions for the key personas that you are marketing to. Oh, yeah. So I'm not using a specific one here just because I'm kind of like in a more like exploratory mode. But like once you figure out, like you repeat the same thing, you put the same prompt, you can create a custom mode and put that into instructions. So you don't need to tap it again and again and again. So what I do, I think one of the things that is like a big difference between if you do this in ChatGPT or Claude is the ability to obviously manage everything that you generate and all the context within the file structure and then being able to reference multiple documents. So this becomes a source of truth for you. And then when you want to bring up, the persona, product, or the brand voice, you would just like tag in all these files that are necessary for each of the tasks you are trying to execute. And I'm trying to save it to persona MD file. So it's going to probably crawl again, look into product MD and generate a list of personas. And for each of the steps, obviously, you want to go review and making sure you're targeting the right person in this list. So it looks like it's, how does it look? Does anyone have any output from persona definition? Like how does that correlate with how you're thinking about your personas? Yeah, based on your website and then everything. Okay, damn, okay. That's unfortunate. Really? Okay. Can some of you try go and then trying to create an API key for this? Just want to make sure it works because we're going to be trying to crawl as much content as possible. And if it doesn't work, like, it kind of becomes pointless a little bit. Okay, if that works, sweet, yeah. So cursor scraping sounds like it works. Okay, yeah, basically, yeah, I can fetch the URL. Yeah. Yeah, okay, sweet. Yeah, all right. So, oh yeah, sweet. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna go to cursor settings. I think it's available for MCP. MCP. Okay, so you can just find view MCP settings. So here's all the MCPs I have. And then you click on add new MCP here in the section. So I'm not going to show all my keys, but what you can do is if you can go to the README file in this repo that I created, there's a link to Perplexity, Playwright, and also Firecrawl MCP installations. So you need to put the section here for Firecrawl and put your API key right here. No, it's not really, yeah, that's I tried to like cut it here, it didn't work. Okay. Did anyone have success with Firecrawl? Ooh, okay. That's good. Yeah, that's a good idea too. So, yeah, what Firecrawl will help you to is also pass by all the bot protection. So if you like really want to crawl a lot of stuff, that's super helpful. The product? Oh yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go to product definition. So what are you looking specifically for? How did it know how to format it that way? Oh, that's just generated like its own idea. Like you obviously can put the structure of it. So what's the most important is the content inside of it, the structure itself. It's only for your reference for the LLM in the future. The structure matters. No, the structure. I mean, you can modify it. I didn't find it being valuable. It just helps you visually to scan and like structure information when you review that. Okay, so we have our personas here too. So we have a couple of those: team leads, DevOps engineers, security operation analysts. So this is kind of like on par with how I understand how and like who is it targeting. And I think the last thing we would do, and we will try to generate what I call a brand voice. So that will be useful when we start to generate content. And I put already some of if you can open a brand voice MD. So I put already some of the instructions for anti-AI content guidelines. Obviously, we want to sound this as less robotic as possible, but here in the tone of voice, what we would do is we'll try to put some instructions here on how you're already messaging communicating with your customers on your website, and we'll try to replicate that in like a set of instructions. So I'm going to start a new chat here, and then based on the messaging for this, you can just type like super simple. Like I don't think that it's worth copy and pasting. It's basically saying, okay, based on this and this and this and this, do this and save this data into this place. So this is kind of like the typical template for all of those workflows. Invoice from nnn.io and say an update brand voice with those instructions and guidelines. We'll see if it's going to try to crawl the website or not. Okay, so I did web search, something that's not really great. So sometimes I found it useful to call out use Firecrawl MCP. So that definitely like making sure like it's gonna like try to use the MCP for crawling, because it tried to use the search on these terms, which is not exactly what I wanted. Yeah, in Cursor, it still does that. Okay, scroll down. You mean the chat or the brand voice? Oh, so this is you mean the brand voice MD or oh okay. So sorry, yeah. So yeah, it's honestly it's always like take this, I want that, put it there. As simple as that. So if I want to call something out, specifically tag files, and we're going to be using that for the product and the personas and brand voice MD files. So when we're trying to generate the content, but right now I just only we need the website, and I only want to reference and save it to brand voice MD. It's got some updates on how NNN is messaging and how they talk about themselves. So it's fairly generic, I believe. But I think you want to be, if you want to be personable, I think you obviously want to make sure that you add a lot of work manually here, so it doesn't sound robotic or generic as every other website. So we're going to save that. So how are people doing on this? All good? Okay, and finally, I think we're going to finally switch into the nitty-gritty details for this, and we're going to talk about how to plan of what we want to do. And I want to generate essentially a strategy. So if you haven't created that custom mode, let's probably try to create a marketing strategist mode here right now and paste this marketing strategist MD into the custom prompt. So that's something we can also paste this directly into the chat. But I think it would be helpful for you to have some sort of like a preset in Cursor so you can use that after this session. So the way to create that is to go to modes and then create new mode. And then I'm using Cloud for Opus. And then in advanced options, I will paste this. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny field, but I'm going to paste all the content from Marketing Strategist MD into here.
It's not like we're killing it, but would it ever make sense for a big company to use like Notebook LM for their model? In this case, they want to put guardrails around.
So the question is about using Notebook LM for, yeah, I think the value I find in this is that this is all your content sits in one place. So you're able to manage and reference all of those pieces of content seamlessly. For Notebook LM, I believe this is mostly about generating content, right? Already on top of existing PDFs or YouTube videos or whatever.
Big companies did not have it hallucinate.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the things we haven't talked about here is that what probably not going to work because it's heavily relies on Firecrawl is that we obviously want to maintain, ideally, if that's like the structure you're super happy with, it would be really great if you can maintain as a source of truth for all of your content that you push out to your website or social media. So here in the blog section, what I did previously is that I crawled and I put all of the MD files of the already existing blog posts. And when I'm generating brand voice, I just drag and drop all the files and say, hey, based on all of this content already being created, create a brand voice around that and update the brand voice MD. So that creates this consistency across all the pieces of content you're generating continuously. So we can try that. Again, we have limited time today. So we just generated based on the website on your landing page, but I think obviously you can, ideally you would maintain the content like sitting right here. So we have our marketing strategist, and then we're going to start again with a new prompt here. And we would say based on, and we tag all the file, all the product MD and personas, MD and the product website. I'm going to tag nidn.io here. But you obviously you need to tag your own product. I want you to generate a comprehensive marketing strategy. And I think this is something that I found super useful, like inspirational, because I think a lot of people struggle with, okay, so I know I need to do marketing, like what do I do? So LMs are apparently really, really good at giving you essentially a plan of what you need to do. So we'll see what it comes up with. But the next thing we're going to talk about is I'm going to stop it here. So ideally what I like to do instead of like outputting everything in a chat, so I'd like to have a folder here I'm going to call strategy, or maybe it's like, let's create a file in the root directory here, and then we're going to save all of the output. Because what you want to do, you don't really want to create like a expanded chat with a lot of context. It's going to get compressed over time. So you want to have these files being readily available through the whole experience, but also like being able to modify this manually or like iterate with the cursor on that or sections of that. So that's like a living document for you, and you are able to use that through the whole journey. So I'm going to modify this and then say save it to strategy. So when I was looking at this for some of my ideas, I was iterating and I was able to look into different types of channels and like tell me exactly like ideas where to go. Like did some research on communities, for example, I need to plug into for the specific personas I'm looking into. So this is super helpful, just like to give you like an initial structure, and then obviously you want to iterate on that and like maybe discard some of the ideas that you see there. So like none of these files are necessarily need to be 100% generated. So imagine that would be generation in the beginning and iterate on this manually. So this talks about like multi-year plan. Obviously, it's not something you would do in an early stage startup, but I think that's helpful. And again, so this is maybe like it's a blueprint for your team to look into. Like if you don't have a marketing strategy, that's an easy way to kickstart that. So we have some opportunities here around workflow automation. So we're talking about personas here. Okay, so education enablement, so some content around getting started, some basic content use cases and solutions. So let's say you're solving a solution for a client using this tool. So that's something they probably want to do. Technical deep dives, 20%. Again, so you can dial it down or up based on how you want to do that. But for end-to-end, it has like a super extensive community. So that's definitely part of the strategy here. And then based on this strategy, what I would like this to be make it more actionable. I would like us to go and help us to generate like a 30-day content calendar. That's something I would give you the structure on how to make it actionable based on this strategy. Create a 30-day content plan for me. Again, so save it and save it to content calendar. I created this file, but yeah, you can just add it here if it's too much work. So I'm explicitly linking this file. So obviously Cursor would be able to know and maybe look into strategy docs if it matches by name or the previous context. But I like to explicitly mention all of the files that you absolutely need to go into them. So the idea here is that it's going to tell us what to do, and then we'll try to do an example, like a few examples of that in the session. So I'm being a heavy user of Opus 4, but I think people like Gemini 2.5 Pro for especially like research tasks. I had some issues with that in Cursor, so I haven't been using that. I know that 4.5 that I think is going to be deprecated soon. It's been pretty good at content writing, creative writing, but overall I think like Cloud and Gemini 2.5 Pro has been good. Okay, so generating basically has a plan on what to do. So obviously there is some content. So let's look into the content calendar. Yeah, Firecrawl has different modes. So if you even use Firecrawl, haven't used Firecrawl, I use it to like build basically like a super simple RAG. I crawl the website and help desk section here. So in the playground, it has the single URL mode, which is basically what we've been using so far. Crawl, it just goes in depth and can go into subdomains and crawl a whole structure. And I can say, okay, the limit is 10 pages or like 500 pages. And there's a mapping tool here that builds all of the URLs available on the website. So if you want to build like completely like SEO optimized website, I highly recommend like using that tool and then iterating with LLM on how to optimize that structure. And I have some like search. I haven't used that much, but I think pretty much single URL or like multiple URL crawls. So one thing that you can do with Firecrawl, it's a little bit of detour. Let me actually finish this. I'm going to get back to this. So what it gave us is basically the plan and some ideas on how to execute that. For example, the first one is Complete Guide to Workflow Automation in 2024. A little bit outdated, so obviously we want to have something in 2025. And we're going to pick one of those ideas, and we're going to try to generate a blog post around that. So to answer your question on the Firecrawl, one thing you can find useful with Firecrawl, if we go, let's say there's a documentation, it's probably super heavy. Use cases, product integrations, maybe they have different pages for this. Okay, cool. So for some reason, maybe we want to save all of the context around like the integration style our product has. So haven't tested it yet, but crawl integrations page and visit each integration page and save and return and then save results into integrations MD, something like that. So what it would do, it would just go and crawl, fire multiple MCP calls, and then we'll try to save this content into where you want this to be. So what I find it like really not really optimal is that it's essentially going to pass it through LLM. So LLM is going to be reading this from an MCP and then again writing this using an LLM, which is obviously you don't want to do that. So I would highly recommend just looking into some sort of like scripts, how to run this through an API. MCP is not necessarily great because the LLM will be the gate, the man in the middle essentially for anything that comes from the tool. So the content for each of those pages could be massive. So LLM going to be like rewriting all of that content and you probably don't want to do that. Okay, getting back to where we are. So I think what we're going to try to do, we're going to try to generate a blog post around this topic. And so this is more of like a guide style of workflow automation. So I have a couple of templates here. So I created a couple of templates, and I think what would be maybe different. I'll try to do that. You can follow this structure, and you can follow the recommendations from the content plan and iterate on that. They'll give you like a really good idea how to go about this for the like first 30 days. So, but there's a couple of templates I put together. So templates, the value of templates is that they will create consistency around your plan. And one of the interesting things I found, like in terms of SEO and generating content, is that you can, the first, like the best, easiest thing to do is go and research your competitors and compile those competitors into, comprehensive research, and then trying to talk about competitive alternatives. And the reason I'm saying that, I was looking into the traffic that some of the products, NNN is not doing a good job on content marketing, but Zapier does. And they have a lot of different landing pages that are really not relevant to Zapier, but have like best ChatGPT alternative. And it drives a ton of traffic, and it's like very much a consumer PLG traffic that builds a brand awareness around Zapier, and eventually people will sign up for the product. So in your space, obviously, people are going to be looking for competitors. So we can try to use that template to generate the competitive landing page for, let's say, an alternative to NNN. And to do that, we'll start with, I'll kick it off like a new chat here. And in research, we'll create a new file. I'm calling it NNN competitors. And what we're going to do, and we're going to ask Cursor to, can you do an extensive web research and find all the competitors for NNN and all their features, use cases, and pricing plans? And I'm going to also tag NNN. I want to also ask this to use Firecrawl MCP and also Perplexity MCP for the research. And I'll try to use also like this researcher mode. I'm going to use L3. I haven't used it for research. So I found a bunch of competitors, Zapier, Make, Pipedream, Parabola, like sounds pretty relevant. But what I would do, maybe it's not going to do that right now, but it's going to go and trying to do a Perplexity search for each of those competitors and trying to grab all of this information. It's probably going to be like multiple calls per competitor, and then it will return us a comprehensive list of all the competitors in this file. And then it's using the built-in, which is probably cheaper. How's the search going for all of you? Yeah. So that's probably the heaviest task here, because there's a lot of I would imagine like your products are in competitive spaces. Why we're not using Cursor? It's just a tool that I found super useful that I'm familiar with. We can use Cloud Code if you really prefer that. But the idea is that instead of storing files and all the content normally that you would probably think about Google Docs or Notion, so to store it all in a local system and then in a file structure that you create and maintain. And then, I find it's like it has a pretty cool agentic capabilities, as probably ChatGPT or Claude will have, but it's able to go and like reference all its documents. And I think like once your content volume starts to grow, that's going to be hard to maintain. So the challenge I found with all of these tools is like dragging and dropping, updating all of those prompts will be really heavy. This is unfortunately is saving all the results in here. So I didn't say I want this results in this file. So that's the problem with some of this prompt sometimes, that just like outputs everything in the chat. So, and then you gotta just making sure like it's saved somewhere. But you can use any other tool if you feel like for marketing or something better. But it's all about text and files, and it's basically what IDE is. Okay, so I'm not gonna. I'll just ask it to save it to competitors file. So essentially any additional context you create in your workflows, you want this to be stored somewhere in the file. Where the traditional workflow with the ChatGPT is that it's all in the chat, and then you are relying on that experience to be able to reference that content. And the context is gonna continue growing over time. So, and I think you'll start to miss out on a bunch of stuff that's been happening in the beginning of it. What's that? Oh yeah. So you can update the document artifacts in Claude. Yeah, that's one way to do that. But I think if you want to you can also create a project. Like one of the ways is to create a project in ChatGPT and drop all that stuff in a project, and then create a new chat every time you want to try to do that, which is super helpful. There's sets of instructions. You can use that approach too. Okay, so this is like a lot of pages here. I don't know why I created a table, not super helpful. Wow, I'm not sure if it's readable. Anyway, so it's not great this time. But what I think I tried to force it to create in the format that I used in the researcher, which I haven't tested, and it forced it to create a table. But generically, you'll probably prefer to have a markdown file with sections. We're not gonna continue on iterating on that. I hope you have an idea. So for this set of competitors, I would like us to go and start generating content based on this. Like the idea we're going to go for the best competitor alternatives for, let's say, Zapier, and we're going to use this template to generate the Zapier alternatives based on the research. Like the idea is that you want to research as much as possible and put into the research doc as much documentation and context as possible, and use the template against that research documentation to generate a blog post. And we're going to start here a new chat, and we're going to say, based on this research, best competitors alternative, I want you to generate a blog post about Zapier, let's say NNN. And obviously, if I'm marketing for NNN, I probably don't want to do that. So I want to use Zapier alternatives using this. I'm going to mention this template. Make sure to use brand voice and save the article to, and then I'm going to create a file here, Zapier devs. So this is probably not going to use any of the MCP tools, but we're going to use Club for Opus for this and trying to see what it comes up with. So yeah, so you can do and then drop it here, boom, and then it's going to be basically reference all of these files. Yeah, you can also select files individually and say, hey, like what I want to do in the prompt, like I want to mention this. Obviously, it's going to, when you tag that, it's my understanding is I'm going to include the file into the context, but also we'll mention the name of the file surrounded by the words in the prompt itself, so it knows where to go. But you can drag and drop it here. So what it does is starts to generate alternatives. And then the idea here is that you create these templates that you can use for essentially looking into all the competitors that NNN has and generate 8 to 10 blog posts around all of those and how they map out to the rest of the market. That's basically what will create. It'll create those landing pages on your website that users, when searching for a competitor to Zapier, when they're not happy with Zapier, they'll potentially find your page. This is probably like relatively saturated for the specific example, like relatively saturated space. But I think if you are in more niche markets, that definitely works. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. I think you probably can do give very specific instructions in the mode itself to ask it only rely on the content available in the context. So that's one thing. Like if you want to do like a super like strict drag, you just say, hey, like don't trying to pull in any information from the training, like only use information provided in the context below. And obviously, it's really hard to avoid hallucinations completely, but it's a matter of just trial and error.
Step 4.
Absolutely, yeah. What you can do obviously use this in a custom prompt, but also you can create a new mode that you want to be like criticize any piece of content or anything produced essentially. Yeah. You can do also fact check that will be helpful with like, all of the MCPs like Perplexity will be able to go and like fact check specific things to bring it back. Yeah, I think maybe we'll have some time for this, but one of the things that would be valuable for SEO is to go and look into from like an SEO expert, basically agent. You can create this agent as a mode here, and then you can go reference any piece of like landing page or any section on your website and say, hey, like you are an SEO strategist, like help me to give you like more tactical feedback on how to improve this content. So it's optimized for SEO. And one other thing we're going to talk about that a little bit later is the keywords. So maybe that's the next segue here. So we found a bunch of, for some reason, references 2024. So this is pretty helpful that it suggests to change it to 2025. But we have the best alternatives to Zapier, and it provided us with 8 different options. So this has been following the template. So the template is here. So this is the structure, the types of questions I want to answer. This is how I want this to look into each of the competitors. List of the features. It depends on how you want this to be structured on the website. You can customize this, obviously. So we have this article, and what we want to do as NNN, we want to understand how to optimize the SEO for this, right? So one of the ideas here is keyword optimizations. So if you haven't used any of the SEO tools, if you are first of all, maybe let's talk about why SEO matters. With the release of Google Overviews, a lot of people are complaining that the content that generated 5 years ago was generating continuously a lot of organic traffic is being going down because Google Overview is giving a lot of answers directly at the top of that. So in this case, obviously another emerging trend is that a lot of people are looking and searching through ChatGPT or Perplexity. So in my opinion, it honestly doesn't really matter. So optimizing for SEO for Google basically will let you optimize for ChatGPT and Perplexity search, because Aside from Google itself, everyone else is, to my understanding, is using Bing Search API. So it all kind of goes down into how Bing thinks about ranking all those results. And it's not necessarily like top 10 if you're like number 5 in this. ChatGPT will return you number 5. It's on a level like trying to, re-rank all of the results in their own, because of their like their own idea of what matters to the user and the prompt. So SEO, I think, still alive, and I think it still makes sense to invest into that and build some volume. And obviously getting backlinks is like one of the most important things. So like build your reputation for your website, but having something to link to, I think is super valuable. What we're going to use today, and we're going to use this tool called Ahrefs. So you don't need to have access to this, but you can also use SEMrush. There's a couple of alternatives. So what these tools do, they'll help you to go and analyze the website and understand what are the organic keywords, what are the paid keywords, what's the volume on this, and trying to help you to find opportunities for optimization. So for N8N, we'll try to see how is N8N doing for SEO, and we'll try to find some opportunities for optimization. So again, this is probably they're not doing a great job compared to Zapier or even like some of the new products like Lindy.ai, but we'll try to find and make sure like if we are looking at N8N, like how do we want to optimize our strategy in terms of the content, and how do we make sure like these keywords that we use in this blog post are the keywords that our users are searching in Google. So I'm going to just trim it down to US only just to reduce the amount of noise. We're going to also exclude branded keywords and see what comes up with. Okay, so this is something that people are searching that N8N is ranking at. And I think if you want to double down on that strategy, so we probably want to make sure like this content is mentioned in some of this keywords. And another thing you can do is take a competitor and like go research their volume and keywords for your competitor and trying to replicate that. If you want to be ranked around like 1 to 10 on the Google search results for that. So I think that's one of the other things you can do. So what we can do here is that I'm just going to grab this and just copy paste this into a file. You don't need to probably to do that because you don't have access to the tool. But I'm going to just copy paste this into my keywords MD. And I'm going to say, okay, based on the keywords, actually I'm going to mention the file. Keywords I want to rank for content to reflect these keywords. So you can do this like a slice and dice. It's obviously a huge data set you can pull from these tools, but I think what it makes sense to create is that some of the references of the keywords, and we'll see this in a diff. Let me actually accept that first. So what are you doing? Essentially, you're ingesting the bits of here and there of the words that people search for, and then if it's through the content continues. So the user is probably not going to notice that, but I think that the SEO engine will. How to get to this page? So if you use Ahrefs, there's a thing called Site Explorer at the top. You put you could do a domain here, and then you can put any domain. You can like research your competitors. Obviously, it's super helpful to understand how they rank. Let's say like we want to look into Zapier.com and see what they rank at. I was just looking at it yesterday, and interestingly, ranked a lot of like really weird queries that you would not think if you exclude the branded search. Yeah. So there's a whole series about like how to use these tools. But the idea here is that you want to optimize for keyword difficulty. You also want to lose maybe you want to do like the long tail. You want to optimize for the long tail and volume. So you don't want to really get into queries that have like 2 million searchers per month. So you could have like a lot of So and then another thing I think spot on. Cool. So Zapier, we try to exclude the pricing, so non-branded all keywords, and then United States. So we're going to see what Zapier is ranking at. So what they rank actually really well at is that just like some bunch of best tools for X. They're not related to Zapier at all, but they drive a ton of traffic from here. So that's the best key planning, keyword research tools. And they have like the best studio apps. They have like the best accounting software. And they've been really, really good at that since 2010s, and they probably dominate a lot of the search queries here. As you can see, the keyword difficulty is super high. Some of them they're like number 1 in like the top 10. So yeah, that gives you an impression like what you can do. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be your product content around your product. It could be anything that's related to that industry or the type of user that is searching for something related to your space. So while we pulled all these keywords, so you see it starts at a little bit of a more interesting bits of here. Let's say comparison adds like workflow automation tools. That's obviously going to like trigger some of the SEO engines to think about that. So obviously you can optimize the title, description, all that matters a lot. It just keeps going and keeps going. Yeah, so this is the kind of the idea. And I think another thing I would just want to add here just one other SEO tactic, which would be useful for you have already content on your website, is what is called interlinking. So when you create, if you look into how Zapier does that, they probably have doing a really good job in their blog posts, as far as we're using this as a reference. Where's the blog? I don't even know where the blog is. Okay, so they have this, let's say, automation inspiration. So what they do, if you look at that, they have a lot of references to customer relationship management tool, CRM tools. They have, obviously they're trying to link to the workflows they have in the system, but it's probably not the best example, but they have some references to different types of tools. And one of the challenges here, let's say you have a volume of articles that you already have on your blog, let's say like they're 20. What you want to do, ideally, you want to interlink those articles between each other. So like when users are interested in a topic, obviously for SEO, it's SEO engine, it's important that it knows that all these articles kind of like are on the same topic. And you can instruct LLM to, based on the volume of the articles here, like unfortunately I have the on here, but what we can do, we can say, okay, based on all of this blog posts that you see in this folder, find interlinking opportunities and go and update these files and include the markdown links to each other. So what we do is essentially go through, analyze it, create you a list of opportunities and topics that you think those articles are related. And we're trying to ingest these links in those articles to link to each other. So like one of the probably typical examples you've seen in the content is that read more. So if you're looking for more information. So this is something that you can automate with some of these workflows here. And you can have like a article interlinking mode that just does that, looks into all the blog posts that you have already, and tries to ingest all those links and like update the content to include more linkage to your existing content. So that kind of creates this whole graph of interlinked content that is super useful for SEO. I think last thing I would mention here for just in general, what I found useful is you want this to be something that you can iterate on, but also like push out really quickly. So if that's something that, Markdown is not the thing that works for your system, maybe you want to reconsider that. If you really want to use this workflow, you can also install an MCP. For example, Webflow has an MCP. So within Cursor, you can push out that content directly to Webflow blog, to the Webflow SCMS. So I prefer using something that's file-based. So I'm using Astro, one of the frameworks that's it's a content generation website framework. So that based on markdowns already. So if you have something already that you're working in with has markdowns, that's perfect because you can ingest that and continue iterating in this repo on the content, and then you just do git push and your new content is out. So the idea here is like, how do you streamline from 0 to having a blog post in like 10 minutes? And I think this is something I think that makes it possible. One of the revelations for me was, okay, I can use Cursor for non-developer tasks. And that was because I'm familiar with the agentic system and all the tools. It kind of pushes you to like invest more and more, but you can also use this for a lot of like product management. Like a lot of people thinking, like we talked about, PRD is creating tasks list. I use this for in like some of my client work and consulting work. I'm using it for writing proposals. Like I'm basically creating a knowledge base with all of the meetings that I'm creating, like all the summaries, all the takeaways, and basically that becomes like a huge knowledge base, but I'm keeping this knowledge base within the Cursor. So I'm referencing all those files, all the meeting notes, all the opportunities, all the problems, all the SOPs, all of that becomes essentially like a living organism. So you can use this in many different use cases where you think if it's like knowledge work, if it's outside of the code and you're capturing context, but then you're producing something else from there. So you can use Cursor or any IDE for this. It was kind of like eye-opening for me, just like a switch in my brain, because I was struggling to like, if I have the Google Drive, maybe you can connect ChatGPT or Claude to Google Drive. But then like all these files on this content being updated, so you need to continuously reference that. Ideally, what people do, not ideally, but what people do, they just copy it, drag and drop, copy paste all the time. And I feel this is where like one of the biggest blockers for people to use these tools more extensively is that it's not like an end-to-end experience. For sure, yeah. The takeaway here is that custom GPTs could be the answer to that, and then it's useful to ask ChatGPT to come up with personas and use that instead of web research. I do agree with you. It doesn't necessarily need to be all web research, so you can ask, because it's all the same LLMs we're using on a daily basis through ChatGPT or Claude, so you can ask them to do inference some of the ideas directly from the pre-training. Yeah, I have some research in that. So I have some content generated probably like a year and a half ago that was auto-generated, like some summaries of the videos that I put online for the volume, and I still see a bunch of clicks going through this. So my perspective on this is that Google will prioritize in the search results what's actually still valuable for the users. But I think the bigger problem right now is the overview. So people actually are not looking through the links, information through RAG into the results of the overview from your website. Yeah, I would not worry because I think a lot of people are probably reading this, but I think most systems, I think eventually agents basically will be doing that reading. So you optimize it for agents, but also trying to figure out if the user lands there, would they find this information valuable? And I think Zapier is doing a good job, and I believe some of their, like most of the articles in the past 2 years are probably have a lot of AI generation in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.